Chapter 1575, One Stroke. Chapter 1575, One Stroke. Not going to leave. Jian Wushuang's eyes turned cold and the blood mountain sword behind him was unsheathed slowly. Why you wish to fight? Do you think that I will be scared of you? Zi Dongwang still did not care about Jian Wushuang. Since you are unwilling to leave, you can stay here forever. Jian Wushuang's voice turned indifferent the instant when his words left his mouth. Whoosh! 18 shadows appeared at the same time. Every shadow of the 18 shadows was as fast as a ghost, and they flew in front of Zi Dongwang quickly. The 18 shadows swung the long swords in their hands. It was obvious that it was only a normal stroke, and unique skills that were shocking were not used. However, the stroke was too fast. The smile on Zi Dongwang's face disappeared completely, and he stared at the icy-cold sword light which appeared in front of him persistently. In his eyes, the sword light was becoming bigger and bigger. He then did his best to make a move to block the attack. At the very least, he needed his palm to be before the sword light to block it. However, in actual fact, he was too slow. When he had just raised his palm, the sword light had already swept past his neck. Swoosh! A big head was sent flying. Zi Dongwang opened his eyes big. His consciousness did not dissipate completely right away. However, he could only look on as his head was separated from his body, as he could not do anything. How is this possible? Why did this happen? Zi Dongwang's mouth was still muttering something. After that, his eyes started to fade out completely. Jian Wushuang then unleashed an impact and reduced Zi Dongwang's body, which had lost any form of life, to fine powder. After that, his eyes looked toward the Void Real God who was carrying a big axe. Swoosh! The Void Real God, who was carrying a big axe, was so frightened that he retreated quickly and immediately. Jian Wushuang looked at the Void Real God coldly and shouted, "If you still dare to follow me, you will end up like Zi Dongwang." I dare not, I dare not. The Void Real God shook his head repeatedly. This was no joke. Although Zi Dongwang was only a universe god, he was strong enough to be in the top 4 of the universe god ranking list. His abilities were also stronger than that of a normal Void Real God, and he was very close to a peak Void Real God. As such, he was not weaker than a Void Real God. However, he was still killed by Jian Wushuang. Hence, why would he dare to follow Jian Wushuang? Jian Wushuang gave a cold hum. In no time, his body disappeared from the line of vision of the Void Real God. Seeing that Jian Wushuang had left, the Void Real God, who was carrying a big axe, heaved a sigh of relief. When he raised his head again, his eyes were filled with astonishment. Amazing! This is Zi Dongwang, a peak expert who is ranked 3rd in the universe god ranking list. And that Jian Wushuang is merely a universe god. However, in the end, after taking a deep breath, the Void Real God spread the news hastily. Zi Dongwang, who ranked 3rd in the universe god ranking list, has been killed by Jian Wushuang in the Burning Demon region. Moreover, he was killed with one stroke instantly. As soon as such simple news got out, in less than an hour, it caused an uproar in the Burning Demon region, for Symbol Land and the 10 cultivation sanctuaries. At a pavilion in the middle of a lake, amidst continuous mountains within the East Royal Sanctuary of the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, a thin, weak young man who looked ill with a pale expression stood up vigorously. Zi Dongwang was actually killed by Jian Wushuang with one stroke. Just one stroke. How is this possible? From the moment the God-destroying king, who was ranked 1st on the universe god ranking list, got his first position, this was the first time that he had revealed a shocked expression. It must be known that even if it were him and he unleashed all his abilities instantly, he had no guarantee that he could kill Zi Dongwang with one stroke of his spear. However, Jian Wushuang managed to do it. Moreover, according to the real god who witnessed that scene, Jian Wushuang was very relaxed when he killed Zi Dongwang, and it looked as if he did not use his full power as well. Jian Wushuang. Back then he lost all his abilities abruptly due to unknown reasons and became a disabled person. Moreover, it is said that he even went to the mystery land that ordinary people lived in. When I heard this news, I felt that it was a pity for this top genius. However, looking at it now, this Jian Wushuang definitely lost his abilities temporarily due to him practicing some sort of special secret skill. Now, his secret skills are complete, and not only did his abilities recover, his abilities also rose terrifically. Killing Zi Dongwang with one stroke. His current abilities might have surpassed even mine. At the very moment, the God-destroying king could only say that Jian Wushuang might have surpassed him. After all, he did not fight with Jian Wushuang for real. It might just be the void real god who saw Jian Wushuang fighting making an overstatement. No matter what, he was clear that the exceptional genius with abilities that had overpowered him before during the fight in Wu Bei's cave and also caused him to be extremely shocked had returned for real. At the lineage of Star, inside the cave that Hall Master Yuan was in. The Hall Master Yuan of the very moment was laughing heartily, and his laughter reverberated through the whole cave. This Jian Wushuang has only just entered the Burning Demon region. Even before coming into contact with Duan Lingfeng, he has already caused such a huge commotion. Killing Zi Dongwang with one stroke, moreover, he has definitely not unleashed his full power yet. Hall Master Yuan understood that since Jian Wushuang had cleared the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven, his abilities had definitely risen greatly compared to the past. Hence, he could confirm that Jian Wushuang's current abilities were no doubt greater than the God-destroying kings, who ranked first in the universe God ranking list. As for how much stronger Jian Wushuang had gotten, he was unable to tell. However, killing Zi Dongwang with one stroke was definitely not Jian Wushuang's full fighting capabilities. For the past few years, quite a number of deacons in the lineage of Star always thought that I favored Jian Wushuang and that I was too kind toward him. Little did they imagine that Jian Wushuang would be the top genius of the lineage of Star, and that it would be worth all our effort and resources to nurture him. For the past few years, they even looked for me one by one to discuss this matter. Now, I really wish to see what else they will say. After laughing apathetically, Hall Master Yuan informed the deacons in the lineage of Star of this matter immediately. In no time, the lineage of Star was in an uproar. Within the Burning Demon region, Jian Wushuang was still alone by himself, and he was hurrying in the direction of the place that Duan Lingfeng was. During his journey, his expression became unusually cold. Since back then in Wu Bei's cave, I already couldn't tolerate that Zi Dongwang. However, it's a pity that my abilities were not high enough at that time and I could only defeat him at best, as killing him would have been too difficult. However, the present is different from the past. As of now, if I'm not wrong, I could even kill the God-destroying king. Hence, even though he is merely Zi Dongwang, he still dares to be arrogant in front of me. He is really courting death. Jian Wushuang was full of murderous intent. In Wu Bei's cave, both of them were fighting for the white blaze fruit. Therefore, even though Zi Dongwang had found trouble for him by trying to kill him, he would not bear any grudge or take revenge against him intentionally. However, at present, Zi Dongwang acted recklessly and came looking for him with trouble. This was indeed being very foolish. Chapter 1576, Hello, Duan Lingfeng. Chapter 1576, Hello, Duan Lingfeng. Burning Demon region was left behind by an almighty after all. It was a vast expanse. Although Jian Wushuang knew Duan Lingfeng's location, he required some time to rush over. Jian Wushuang had spread his soul power across long ago to ensure no one was behind him. Then, he came to where Duan Lingfeng was hiding. He was at a volcano made of crimson rocks. The volcano looked ordinary, but in actual fact, there was a hidden mystery in it. Duan Lingfeng, I found it. Jian Wushuang sent a message and informed him. You should have noticed the prohibition outside, right? I do not control the prohibition, you can only barge in forcefully, Duan Lingfeng said. I understand, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. Blood Mountain Sword immediately appeared in his hand while his body instantly barged through the prohibition before him. Not only did the prohibition before him have a concealing function, it also had a decent force. An ordinary void real god would find it difficult to pass through the prohibition using force itself. However, Jian Wushuang only spent very little time before he passed through it. In an ordinary cave dwelling after the prohibition, Jian Wushuang finally saw Duan Lingfeng. Duan Lingfeng looked cold, but he seemed to be in good condition. Duan Lingfeng, it is rare to see someone corner you like that, Jian Wushuang joked. You aren't ashamed to talk about me, huh? When you lost all your power previously, you probably looked more in a fix than I am now. As you're here, I'm guessing you have recovered your power? Duan Lingfeng pouted and asked. I just recovered not long ago. I heard that you were in danger, so I rushed over. Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and he sighed emotionally. Luckily, he had already passed through the third inverse cultivation test. Otherwise, with his previous condition, he would be in no position to do anything if he were to find out about Duan Lingfeng's situation. Oh yeah, what happened? Why did you opt to kill the core disciple of Four Symbol Mansion in Four Symbol Land itself? Jian Wushuang asked. Four Symbol Mansion was the overlord of Four Symbol Land. Just like Lineage of Star in Starland. To kill the core disciple of Four Symbol Mansion within the territory of Four Symbol Mansion wasn't a wise choice. Jian Wushuang, when we first met in Ancient Star Sea, I already told you that I have an enemy. I have always been chased after by that enemy and even brought Brother Luo Yen to death. And that enemy was a huge force in a holy kingdom, Duan Lingfeng started explaining. After I become more powerful, I returned to destroy the force. However, the one who I harbored deep-seated hatred among the force, also the universe god who I wanted to kill the most, came to 10 cultivation sanctuaries long ago. I entrusted Vientiane Tower to look for this person and they finally found the universe god in Four Symbol Land, also the core disciple of Four Symbol Mansion. He's the person you killed? Jian Wushuang looked at Duan Lingfeng. Yes, Duan Lingfeng nodded. At first, I intended to wait and kill him when he left Four Symbol Land to wander outside. However, he reached the turning point to break through and become a real god. Hence, he didn't plan to leave Four Symbol Land during the time but stayed back to prepare for the breakthrough. Plus, he was a genius disciple in Four Symbol Mansion. Once he breaks through and becomes a real god, he will be a peak void real god. Then, he will permanently reside in Four Symbol Mansion. By then, it would be even harder for me to kill him. I have no alternative but to take action in Four Symbol Land. I seized the opportunity and killed him when he went to prepare for auxiliary treasure. As for what happened later on, you should have known. I see, Jian Wushuang nodded after he heard the story. He knew that Duan Lingfeng wouldn't go haywire and kill a core disciple of Four Symbol Mansion in Four Symbol Land for no reason. From what it seemed, he really had no choice. If he were to not kill his enemy then, he didn't know how long he would have to wait till he got the chance to kill him in the future. If I were him, I would definitely make the same choice, Jian Wushuang thought to himself. Duan Lingfeng, your situation now isn't great. If I hadn't rushed here, would you be hiding behind this prohibition and waiting for death? Jian Wushuang said curiously. Wait for death? Of course not. Duan Lingfeng shook his head and his voice became deeper. I am betting that I would already break through and become a real god before the experts in Four Symbol Mansion found me. Break through and become a real god? Jian Wushuang was stunned and looked at Duan Lingfeng in shock. You're going to break through? When I was chased after, I really did see a chance to break through. Although I didn't prepare much, I could only risk everything and try. When I am hiding behind this prohibition, I have been trying to break through and become a real god, but I have yet to. However, I have a feeling that I will definitely break through and become a real god if you give me more time. Once I break through and become a real god, I am confident I can rush out from Burning Demon region. Duan Lingfeng clenched his fists. Jian Wushuang heard this and he was astonished. He thought Duan Lingfeng had no way out and that was why he had barged into Burning Demon region for his final struggle. From what it seemed, Duan Lingfeng wasn't fighting like a cornered beast, but he was cutting off all means of retreat to show his determination to push ahead and grab the chance. He lives up to his reputation as a top genius in eternal chaotic world, Jian Wushuang complimented. When I was behind this prohibition alone, I had to keep my guard high although I was trying to break through. Hence, the efficiency of breaking through wasn't high. But then you're here and it's different now. Jian Wushuang, do me a favor. Don't let anyone interrupt me, Duan Lingfeng said solemnly. Okay, Jian Wushuang nodded with a smile. Go ahead and break through in peace. Let me take care of this. Unless I die, I'll definitely not anyone disturb you. Thank you. Duan Lingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang thankfully, but he entered the depth of the cave dwelling to continue to break through without hesitation. He had to seize the time. Then, Jian Wushuang left the cave dwelling and sat outside. After he sat down, he couldn't help but look at the cave dwelling behind him. He sighed, I never thought that at such a crucial moment, Duan Lingfeng would have a chance to break through. So impressive. He's very calm as you, King of Venomous Worms' voice rang in Jian Wushuang's head. You and him are very similar in this aspect. You are the same. The more dangerous it is, the calmer you are and the more likely you are to grasp the slim chance of survival in a certain death situation. True, Jian Wushuang nodded faintly. He calmed down very quickly. This place where Duan Lingfeng is hiding is quite secretive and the surrounding prohibition is quite unfathomable. The experts in Burning Demon region will need some more time to find this place. I should prepare myself during the wait. There was a glimpse of light in Jian Wushuang's eyes. Chapter 1577, Narrowing Down the Search Area. Chapter 1577, Narrowing Down the Search Area. Right after Jian Wushuang had cleared the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven and became a universe god of the third heaven, he went to the Burning Demon region immediately. During his journey, he did not seclude himself in mediation or do any training. However, it must be known that for his abilities, most of them would become a lot more powerful as soon as he achieved the universe god of the third heaven. For example, his sword principles. His sword principles had reached the maximum level for a universe god of the second heaven a long time ago. Moreover, he already possessed higher levels of understanding of sword principles and comprehension. In particular, the accumulated understanding of sword principles from solving the 1000 moves of the Scattered Stars game in Wu Bei's cave had allowed him to possess the ability to create stronger unique skills. However, he was still unable to create them. At the very moment, his realm finally made a breakthrough to the next level. As such, his sword principles would naturally skyrocket and he would be able to create unique skills that were many levels stronger than before. However, the problem was that he had not studied his sword principles or tried to create new unique skills yet. It wasn't until that very moment when he was inside the seal. For the next period of time before the experts found them, he could let his mind settle down and enhance his own sword principles. Let's begin. Jian Wushuang closed his eyes and started his first training after clearing the inverse cultivation test of the third heaven. Time passed slowly. In the blink of an eye, 15 years had passed by. During the 15 years, within the Burning Demon region, the experts of the Four-Symbol Mansion and the experts who came for the reward of 1,000 million Chaos Gems still had not given up on the search for Duan Lingfeng. Moreover, after searching for the past few years, the search area had become smaller and smaller. Up till the very day. Swoosh! A middle-aged man wearing green armor flew past the volcanoes. The middle-aged man was a void real god of the Four-Symbol Mansion. At that very moment, he was moving and chatting with another void real god via the transmission token at the same time. That Duan Lingfeng really knows how to hide. Although the Four-Symbol Mansion has so many experts and we have also searched the Burning Demon region for tens of years, we are still unable to find him. The middle-aged man curled his lips and said, there is no rush. Since we can confirm that Duan Lingfeng is still hiding within the Burning Demon region, we will find him eventually. As soon as we find him, he will definitely be killed. Now, he is merely waiting for death. Laughter could be heard from the other party using the transmission token. That's true. The middle-aged man nodded his head. However, at that very moment, his expression changed abruptly and he stopped moving. The middle-aged man turned around and looked at the volcano that he had just passed through. The volcano looked normal. If one were to look at it with his naked eyes, he would not be able to see anything unusual. However, Since the middle-aged man flew past the skies of the volcano, he felt a special sensation. The middle-aged man then headed toward the mountain slowly. When he reached the sky above the mountain, he started to investigate thoroughly. After some time, he got his answer. There's actually another seal hidden here. The middle-aged man raised his eyebrows and sent a message to the party on the other side of the token. I have discovered a hidden seal and I will go in and take a look first. We shall continue our conversation later. Alright, please be careful. If you come across Duan Lingfeng, do not confront him. Moreover, even though the seal covering the volcano was considered powerful, it would still be very difficult to stop him. After just a short amount of time, he had bypassed many obstacles and was only left with the last obstacle. After getting past the last obstacle, he would be able to observe the real view of the volcano clearly. Break. The middle-aged man swung the big hammer on his hands and was about to smash the final obstacle. However, all of a sudden, an invisible strength headed toward him. The middle-aged man's body shook and his consciousness turned sleepy immediately. After that, an icy cold sword light lit up and swept past the middle-aged man's neck. It was only when his life was about to come to an end that his consciousness woke up. As the middle-aged man murmured, his eyes were filled with fright. However, at the final moment, his consciousness still managed to send out a message. Duan Lingfeng is at. The middle-aged man was only able to send a forward message out. After that, the light in his eyes faded away completely. At the volcano covered by the seal, Jian Wushuang was still sitting down with his legs crossed, and he was putting the Blood Mountain sword in his hands back into the scabbard. After that, he raised his head and looked in the direction of the middle-aged man. Due to the seal's interference, Jian Wushuang could see what was happening in the outside world. However, the middle-aged man was unable to see him. Jian Wushuang's expression turned grave. Someone has found this place. Although he was killed by me straight away, there is no guarantee that he didn't send a message out before he died. In other words, the location that Duan Lingfeng and I are in will most likely be exposed. Hence, the experts of the Four-Symbol Mansion would hurry over in no time. Jian Wushuang frowned and glanced at the cave behind him immediately. For the past 15 years, Duan Lingfeng had secluded himself in meditation all the while. Jian Wushuang had also stood guard outside the cave so that Duan Lingfeng would not be disturbed in the slightest. However, it was not easy to make a breakthrough to real God. Up till the very moment, Duan Lingfeng was still in the midst of making a breakthrough. I hope that he is able to make it in time. If not, Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed with coldness and he closed his eyes again immediately. At the same time, when the middle-aged man was killed by Jian Wushuang, at a corner that was within the burning demon region, a black-haired, bold old man's body stopped moving abruptly. There was a token on his hands and the 4 words of the middle-aged man were sent over. Duan Lingfeng is at. However, the message stopped there. The black-haired old man also sent a message with the intention to question him immediately. However, there was no reply at all. He's dead. Real God Qingling is already dead. He has definitely found the hiding spot of Duan Lingfeng. Thus, he was killed by Duan Lingfeng straight away. The black-haired old man thought that it was Duan Lingfeng who had killed real God Qingling. He then sent a message to the real God experts of the Four-Symbol Mansion at once to inform them of this matter. Apart from being furious, the experts of the Four-Symbol Mansion locked on to a particular area within the burning demon region. Real God Qingling has been communicating with me all the while. I have also asked for his location and he said that he had just passed by the Earth-Fire Demon Lair. After that, he continued to talk to me for a short while. Thus, in such a small amount of time, he will definitely still be somewhere close to the Earth-Fire Demon Lair and that was where he died. As long as we conduct a search thoroughly within the range of 1,000 million miles of the Earth-Fire Demon Lair, we will definitely be able to find Duan Lingfeng. The black-haired, bold old man was very sure. Thus, the Four-Symbol Mansion narrowed down the range of their search area at once. Initially, it would be very difficult for the Four-Symbol Mansion to find Duan Lingfeng as there were countless seals within the vast burning demon region. However, at that very moment, the search area had been narrowed down to only 1,000 million miles. Thus, it would be much easier for them to find Duan Lingfeng. Chapter 1578 Found. Chapter 1578 Found. The experts in 4 symbol mansions scattered around Earth Fire Demon Lair within a 10 billion mile range and searched. Merely 5 days later, there were 2 Void Real God from 4 symbol mansion that stopped in the air above the volcano which Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng were in. The 2 Void Real Gods overlooked the volcano below them. I never knew that there was another prohibition here, a lady in black smiled faintly. Real God Huan Ling, it's your call, the cold-looking bald man next to her said. Let me take care of this, the lady in black smiled faintly and immediately started to resolve the prohibition. Burning Demon Region was left behind by an almighty and there were many traps. As such, among the experts that were sent by 4 symbol mansion to chase after Duan Lingfeng, many had high attainment in formation and prohibitions. The lady in black, Real God Huan Ling, was one of them. As Real God Huan Ling was resolving the prohibition, in the volcano that was covered by the prohibition, Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. It seems like we can't continue to hide. We have to fight head-on. Jian Wushuang stood up. He knew that once the prohibition at the surrounding of volcano was resolved entirely, Duan Lingfeng and he would be revealed before 4 symbol mansion. Then, the experts from 4 symbol mansion wanted to barge in and Jian Wushuang wouldn't be able to stop them. After all, the experts in 4 symbol mansion could totally ignore him and charge into the cave dwelling to kill Duan Lingfeng. Hence, he had to take action before the prohibition was resolved. Blood Mountain Sword appeared in Jian Wushuang's hand. Whistle! Jian Wushuang flew out in silence. In the void above, the lady in black was still resolving the prohibition attentively. As for the bald man, he stood next to her. Just then, there was suddenly a burst in the air. Although the burst in the air was extremely soft, the bald man instantly noticed. Real God Huan Ling, watch out! The bald man shouted while he immediately wielded a saber. What? The lady in black was frightened. Wow! A brilliant sword light suddenly exploded and the sword light was so fast that no one could see the trace. Humph! The bald man humphed and the saber in his hand slashed out like a lightning. It was as though there was thunder from nowhere. The saber collided with the sword light directly and there was an explosion of fierce power. The bald man retreated from the impact while the lady in black, Real God Huan Ling, retreated too. The 2 of them retreated far away before they steadied themselves again. The moment the bald man steadied himself, he immediately took out a communication token, found them. Here's where they are. In that instant, the experts from 4 symbol mansion who were looking for Duan Lingfeng within the 10 billion mile range were thrilled with excitement. Found him. Finally found him. He's really around the Earth Fire Demon Lair. Go, hurry up and go. A large number of experts hurried over. In a short while, there were more than 40 experts from 4 symbol mansion in the void surrounding the volcano that came. Among the experts who came, besides the few universe gods, the others were all void real gods. There's quite a number of real gods. Jian Wushuang held his sword with one hand as he stood in the void and watched the group of real gods before him. He licked his lips slowly. For a force like 4 symbol mansion, ordinary void real gods were nothing. Just like Lineage of Star, although there weren't many core real gods who were an appendage to Lineage of Star were quite many. They could easily gather 10 or even hundreds of void real god to Earth Fire Demon Lair. Then, the real gods from 4 symbol mansion fixed their gazes on Jian Wushuang. Although Jian Wushuang didn't reveal himself, they were certain that Duan Lingfeng was definitely behind the prohibition behind Jian Wushuang. Jian Wushuang, do you really want to get involved in what happened today? The cold-looking bald man asked in a deep voice. Nonsense. If I am not getting involved, why am I here? Jian Wushuang sneered. Duan Lingfeng is my best friend. If you want to kill him, you have to kill me first. You have guts. The bald man roared. Don't waste time with him. If I'm not mistaken, real god Qing Ling should have died by Jian Wushuang's hands, The old and strong black-haired elderly spoke. Real god Qing Ling was a void real god close to the peak after all. But in the end, he was killed in an instant without any struggle. Duan Lingfeng definitely couldn't do that, but Jian Wushuang could. He killed Zi Dongwang with one stroke. He killed Four Symbol Mansion's real god. Although he was the top genius from Lineage of Star, we definitely can't just let this slip. We need to capture him alive and bring him back to the mansion. Hall Master Yuan from Lineage of Star has to come and apologize personally, the old and strong black-haired elderly said. All right, the bald man nodded and he looked at the three void real gods next to him who had stronger auras and said, Jian Wushuang killed Zi Dongwang in one stroke. He is powerful. Real god Tong Yi, real god Zhonghua, real god Bai Hao, the three of you and I team up and suppress him. No problem, the three void real gods nodded. The three of them and the bald man were peak void real gods. They were the strongest four among the real gods at the scene. If the four of them team up, even if they were to fight against a weaker eternal real god, they definitely could be evenly matched. Let's go! The bald man bellowed. Then, the four fierce auras suddenly exploded and the four figures plunged forward instantly. Jian Wushuang continued to stand there, but he could feel the pressure that the four fierce auras ahead brought about. However, there was no fear nor worries on his face. On the contrary, there was a glimpse of light in his eyes. I went through the third inverse cultivation test for 21,000 years. During the 21,000 years, I never fought with anyone, let alone fight a life-and-death battle. My body was asleep for too long. I almost forget the feeling of a massacre. But now, I can finally fight a battle heartily. Jian Wushuang clenched his hands and the blood all over his body was boiling. His intention to fight was billowing. He stared at the four people who were charging at him. Fight, let's fight. Let me see just how strong I am now. With boundless excitement and passion, Jian Wushuang's figure grew illusory. Virum. 18 shadows were cast simultaneously. The 18 shadows under the influence of the power of space-time pierced through the void easily. The speed of it, the four void real gods from Four Symbol Mansion moved before Jian Wushuang much earlier, but Jian Wushuang rushed to them faster than they did to him. Wow. The 18 shadows wielded their swords altogether and swung. It looked as though there were really 18 people launching an attack at the same time. Chapter 1579, Four Void Real Gods. Chapter 1579, Four Void Real Gods. Jian Wushuang had drawn his sword at the same time as the four void real gods. However, his sword principles still clashed with the attacks unleashed by the four void real gods first. Clang, 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 clang. For sounds of metal clashing could be heard continuously. The strong power pulverized the void across the area, and the bodies of the four peak void real gods from the Four Symbol Mansion could not help but retreat. This little kid. What a strange martial art motion, real god Tong Yi said shockingly. Don't underestimate him. Back then in Wu Bei's cave, he was recognized as the #1 in martial art motion among the universe gods. Now, since his abilities have grown stronger, his martial art motion would naturally be more frightening, the bald man said earnestly. Buzz! 18 shadows appeared again. However, this time around, Jian Wushuang appeared directly in front of the four of them. As he raised the Blood Mountain sword in his hands, the divine power in his body flowed into the long sword continuously. It must be known that back then when Jian Wushuang was still a universe god of the second heaven, he was a universe god who possessed the three strongest sword principles. Combined with the ancient god power, as well as the fact that he was an inverse cultivator, his full power was stronger than many of the universe gods of the third heaven. Furthermore, with the secret skill of the blood feather reincarnation armor, his power was not too far from that of a void real god. When he achieved the universe god of the third heaven, not looking at other components, his divine power alone had multiplied tens of times. At that very moment, just his divine power alone had achieved the highest peak of a real god. One stroke of no regrets. Boom! A great amount of sword essence, which contained a faithful will that would not disappear until death, appeared, and it wished to destroy the whole heaven. The void froze and it was extremely cold. When the void was completely frozen, a sword light appeared. One stroke of no regrets. Jian Wushuang had been training within the volcano for 15 years. For this unique skill, it was created from using his accumulation of sword principles from the past and combined with his own comprehension toward the reincarnation doctrine and spacetime doctrine. Real God-level unique skills were similar to those of a universe god, and they were split into 3 stages. The first stage was equivalent to a void real god, the second stage was equivalent to an eternal real god, and the third stage was equivalent to a chaotic real god. By comparing the levels, Jian Wushuang's stroke was the strongest unique skill of the first stage of a real god. In a situation where Jian Wushuang unleashed his full power at such a close distance, the giant and boundless sword light appeared in front of the 4 void real gods of the 4-symbol mansion with a flash. This stroke. The 4 void real gods revealed shocked expressions. All of them could feel a great pressure from the stroke, and they also had a sense that they would not live through the stroke if they were alone. "Quick, let's work together to block this stroke," the bald man shouted fiercely at once. The 4 void real gods acted right away. The bald man swung his saber straight away. At the moment he swung his saber, the shadow of a giant exotic beast appeared behind him. Both the hands of the shadow also raised the saber fiercely, and a towering saber shadow descended mightily. Real god Tong Yi's eyes turned icy cold, and he was holding a black, old ape. The black ape contained a huge amount of power. When real god Tong Yi unleashed his divine power, he created a fierce, giant wave which was similar to that of a tsunami. Real god Zhonghua's body was covered by an enormous amount of flames. His palms inside his gloves had also turned completely red. With a shout from him, he clapped his hands once. The flames then turned into a giant fire lion and started to attack madly at once. As for real god Bai Hao, he stabbed the void with his long spear. The void collapsed with whooshing sounds, and a giant black hole which was rotating crazily appeared fiercely. The black hole could swallow everything in the universe, and it was launched at that moment abruptly. Jian Wushuang and the 4 void real gods had only started to fight, and they had only faced each other for second time. However, the 4 void real gods had already unleashed their full power and used their ultimate moves. For strong attacks that contained a great amount of power clashed with the giant sword light that Jian Wushuang unleashed instantly. Bam! A frightening, earth-shaking, thunder-like sound could be heard. The sound echoed across the whole universe, and it was extremely loud. The frightening divine power then became a divine power storm that had never existed before. Within the divine power storm, the person who was at the front was the bald man who had unleashed a towering saber shadow. When it clashed with Jian Wushuang's sword light, it was broken into pieces at once. The bald man's arms trembled and his saber almost slipped out of his hands. After that, the sword light collided with the tsunami. Swoosh! The giant tsunami was split into 2 sections, and the expression of real god Tong Yi, who was holding the black old ape, turned pale. He then staggered about and retreated by 3 steps. The sword light continued to sweep across the area mercilessly, and it tore the giant fire lion apart. Real god Zhonghua was extremely shocked, and his palm experienced an unprecedented amount of pain. Lastly, the sword light struck the giant black hole which was rotating madly, and it twisted into pieces. Real god Bai Hao opened his eyes wide as he realized that the sword light continued to head toward his head after smashing his black hole apart. In a flurry, he swung the long spear in his hands to block the attack. Clang! Real god Bai Hao's body shook, and he retreated in a miserable state. At that moment, Jian Wushuang's 18 shadows burst forth again, and one of them appeared behind real god Bai Hao like a ghost. With a swing of his long sword, the Blood Mountain sword left behind a strange mark on the void, and it was so fast that real god Bai Hao did not have time to block it. Swoosh! His head was sent flying, and a peak void real god died on the spot. Hiss! What? How is this possible? Voices of surprise could be heard across the area. The real gods of the four-symbol mansion were looking at the scene fearfully. Even though four-peak void real gods of the four-symbol mansion had teamed up to deal with Jian Wushuang, who was alone, after facing each other twice, 3 of them were actually forced to retreat while one of them was killed on the spot. Moreover, it was one universe god alone who had achieved this feat. Jian Wushuang. The bald man, real god Tong Yi and real god Zhonghua, who were forced to retreat, were extremely furious. They had never expected this to happen. Even though the 4 of them had teamed up, Jian Wushuang had still managed to kill one of them instantly. Moreover, when Jian Wushuang was fighting them, he did not seem worried at all. How dare you? Previously, you killed real god Qing Ling of the four-symbol mansion. Now, you have killed real god Bai Hao. Do you really think that as a top genius of the lineage of Star, the four-symbol mansion won't dare to kill you? The bald man was extremely furious. His voice was filled with a bit of madness and he shouted, "Everyone, Jian Wushuang killed the real gods of the four-symbol mansion again and again. This shows that he does not care about the four-symbol mansion at all. Since this is the case, we do not need to show him any mercy. All of us are to attack together and kill him. Kill! Kill him!" The eyes of the surrounding real gods of the four-symbol mansion started to turn a scarlet color. In no time, a total of close to 40 void real gods attacked at the same time. Chapter 1580 Butcher a large number. Chapter 1580 Butcher a large number. The real gods from four-symbol mansion didn't launch an attack together because they were concerned about Jian Wushuang's identity. Jian Wushuang was the most outstanding disciple of Lineage of Star. If they were to kill Jian Wushuang, Lineage of Star would definitely get mad. Four-symbol mansion didn't want to put aside all considerations of face. Hence, when they knew that Jian Wushuang might have killed real god Qing Ling, they didn't intend to kill Jian Wushuang and only wanted to capture him alive. Besides, Jian Wushuang was only a universe god after all. It was already ridiculous that they had sent 4 peak void real gods to team up to suppress him. If all the real gods were to hem him in, it would be a joke if it were to spread. But then, seeing Jian Wushuang's power and Jian Wushuang's conduct of killing all their men without hesitation, the real gods from four-symbol mansion were furious. No one cared about his identity, nor did they care about courtesy anymore. The real gods charged forward and launched an attack against Jian Wushuang from all directions. Jian Wushuang stood there and watched coldly. He harbored no resentment against four-symbol mansion personally, but they wanted to kill Duan Lingfeng. Duan Lingfeng was his best friend. Whoever wanted to kill Duan Lingfeng, he would kill them with no mercy. Killing one is considered murder, killing a bunch is considered murder too. If so, I might as well butcher a large number. Jian Wushuang's cold voice reverberated the universe. A soaring murderous intention exploded from his body. Blood Mountain Sword in his hand was shivering in madness. It was as though it was cheering for the upcoming massacre. The next moment, Jian Wushuang moved. Virum. The swarm of shadows were suddenly cast. What? So many shadows? Which one is real and which one is fake? The bunch real gods were shocked at the sight. They looked at the void before them and the shadows were shuttling to and fro creepily. It looked like there were 100 shadows at one glance. One must know that Jian Wushuang's martial art motion that casted 18 shadows at the same time were described as terrifying and the void real gods already found it threatening. Then, there were 100 of them. The real gods were dumbfounded. Then, Jian Wushuang's original body already appeared next to a real god and he wielded Blood Mountain Sword. Virum. A faint sword whistle was heard. When he heard the whistle, the real god's consciousness became sleepy. After he passed the 3rd inverse cultivation test, Jian Wushuang's soul power increased tremendously. Then, he had already reached the limit of a void real god. Whatever soul attack he performed, even without the secret skill of Tian Yuan but merely blended in sword principle, would also require one to possess consciousness strength of a peak void real god to withstand. An ordinary void real god wouldn't be able to withstand it. Sword light glided through easily. The real god didn't even have the ability to struggle but died on the spot. Then, Jian Wushuang's original body appeared next to the second real god, and similarly, the sword light whistled and the outcome was the same. Suddenly, there were two real gods killed while Jian Wushuang's body continued to move. Third, fourth, eighth. Massacre. There was a crowd of almost 40 real gods that pounded forward with the intention of killing Jian Wushuang, but they were massacred by Jian Wushuang brutally. Jian Wushuang's martial art motion was too creepy. There were almost 100 figures and they couldn't determine where Jian Wushuang really was. They could only see Jian Wushuang appear next to one real god after another and strike to kill them. Under Jian Wushuang's soul attack, the real gods were like silly men. No one could withstand Jian Wushuang's stroke. Every stroke he swung would kill one real god. There were almost 40 real gods, but they were like Jian Wushuang's single living target at that moment. Jian Wushuang killed them, but they didn't even lay a finger on Jian Wushuang. Occasionally, there were real gods who attacked out of anger and fear, but they only slashed Jian Wushuang's shadow. Their attacks only affected their own men in their surroundings. A situation where they became living targets struck fear in the real gods. Run, hurry up and run. Run quickly. Suddenly, those real gods who were alive immediately ran backwards. All of them were running desperately, and there were still a few real gods who were killed by Jian Wushuang brutally during the process. After a while, the real gods finally ran far away. Then, the real gods gathered and looked at the dead bodies all over the floor in the void. Then, they looked at the few real gods that were left around them. The real gods were suddenly silent. 7. Yes, the real gods who survived Jian Wushuang's mad massacre and escaped, including the bald man, real god Tong Yi, real god Zhonghua, there were only 7 of them. One should know that the time from when the crowd of real gods had swarmed in until 7 real gods had escaped to the void, only 2 breaths had passed. 2 breaths were just an instant. But in the end, in the short period of time, almost 40 real gods were massacred by Jian Wushuang, and there were only 7 of them left. Silence. The universe was in silence. There was only faint breeze whistling in the air. The breeze blew over the bodies all over, and the air was filled with pungent blood smell. At the surroundings of the battlefield, there were experts hiding. The experts weren't from 4 Symbol Mansion, but they came for the bounty of 10 billion Chaos Gems. When 4 Symbol Mansion locked down Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng's location within the 10 billion mile range around Earth Fire Demon Lair, the experts came searching around too. Once they noticed the movement there, they naturally hurried over. They saw the earlier scene too. A universe god, in 2 breaths, had fought against almost 40 real gods, and there were only 7 of them left. It stirred a great commotion in the experts' hearts. The earlier scene, did you record it with the mirroring image? A man with tan skin asked a red-headed maiden. Yes, I did. The red-headed maiden nodded faintly, and there was astonishment in her eyes. That's great. The man with tan skin nodded heavily as there was light shimmering in his eyes. On the battlefield it was still silent. Jian Wushuang held the sword with one hand. From the tip of the Blood Mountain sword, blood was flowing down faintly. I underwent the inverse cultivation test for 21,000 years. I was truly just a commoner. Not only did I have no power at all, I also couldn't feel the existence of any doctrines. But once I passed the inverse cultivation test, I naturally understood more in terms of the power of Heaven Way. The reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine that I comprehended improved tremendously. Chapter 1581, Real God Xuewu. Chapter 1581, Real God Xuewu. Although I am not sure how much the reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine have grown, I feel that both of them have already reached a stage where they could clear the second level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, this is only a safe estimate of mine. Jian Wushuang chuckled. For the 21,000 years that he took to clear the inverse cultivation test for the third heaven, it was not wise to say that he had neither trained nor comprehended anything. After clearing the inverse cultivation test, every area of him grew greatly, and it was the same for his comprehension of the Heaven Way. The growth of the reincarnation doctrine had caused the power of his sword principles to skyrocket. At the same time, the power from the activation of his blood feather reincarnation armor was also great. As for the growth of the spacetime doctrine, it would affect the power of spacetime and cause the speed of his sword principles as well as body movement to go up crazily. Furthermore, there was still a flowing light phantom, a secret skill of the martial art motion. The flowing light phantom had always required the use of the power of spacetime. With greater comprehension toward the spacetime doctrine, this secret skill would become more frightening when used. When he was traveling and fighting in Wu Bei's cave, he had only just comprehended a small bit of the spacetime doctrine. With that, he could unleash the power of the third stage of the flowing light phantom and create 18 shadows. However, after clearing the inverse cultivation test, his comprehension of the spacetime doctrine could make it past the second level of the Doctrine Palace at the very least. By using his power of spacetime in its current state, he could achieve the fourth stage of the flowing light phantom. As soon as the flowing light phantom was unleashed, a total of 99 shadows would be created. 99 shadows were many times more frightening than 18 shadows. He could deal with close to 40 void real gods of the four-symbol mansion when they teamed up. Moreover, he would also be not too afraid even if he were to come across an eternal real god. Hence, with Jian Wushuang's martial art motion, there was only room for the real gods to be massacred mercilessly. In just 2 breaths' time, the real gods were massacred until only 7 of them were left. Moreover, if the 7 of them did not escape immediately, Jian Wushuang had guaranteed that he could wipe out the real gods completely, killing over 30 real gods in one go. As expected, my Blood Mountain sword is about to grow as well. Jian Wushuang's eyes brightened abruptly. He could feel that the Blood Mountain sword was trembling madly at that moment and its power was increasing continuously. In just a short while, the power that the Blood Mountain sword delivered had achieved a new level. The Blood Mountain sword was an embryo sword that would grow continuously during battles, and it had been very useful to Jian Wushuang over the years. In particular, Jian Wushuang had integrated the unique skills created by him into the long sword continuously. As such, the power of the Blood Mountain sword also grew continuously. Back then, the Blood Mountain sword had grown to become a chaos unique treasure which had reached the level of the peak of a universe god. Moreover, it could even rival a real god-level chaos unique treasure. At the very moment, real god level, Jian Wushuang was delighted. He could feel that the Blood Mountain sword had achieved the level of a real god-level chaos unique treasure, and this meant that the power of the Blood Mountain sword would rise again. At that very moment, Jian Wushuang's expression changed abruptly and his eyes also looked in one direction. His soul power had detected very clearly that in that direction, a strong aura was hurrying over. Moreover, the speed at which the aura was coming was very shocking. In just a short amount of time, the shadow appeared in front of everyone. The shadow was a gray-robed old man, and his face looked as if he had experienced many vicissitudes of life. Although his eyes were turbid, they still looked bright and full of expression. The aura that his body had emitted was stronger than anyone else's who was present. Under the attack of the sword light, there was a faint silver light. Real God Shui Wu only took one step back and he immediately stood still. Just as he was going to counterattack, Jian Wushuang's body disappeared before his eyes again. This young man's martial art motion is too creepy. Real God Shui Wu creased his eyebrows. Then, his body quivered and there were 4 muscular arms that extended out of his body suddenly. He had 6 arms then, and every one of them was holding a hammer. 6 arms. Jian Wushuang was surprised. Kill! Real God Shui Wu roared and instantly pounded forward as his 6 arms waved. Jian Wushuang had already put his martial art motion to full play. However, although his martial art motion was creepy, Real God Shui Wu moving his 6 hands at the same time could safely endure the attack that Jian Wushuang's martial art motion attack. Plus, every counter-attack could corner him. I won't waste time with you. Real God Shui Wu's eyes suddenly turned cold and there was a tall ancient shadow that appeared behind him out of nowhere. The ancient shadow looked like an exotic beast but also like a giant. The appearance was vague. Then, as real god Xue Wu opened his mouth, the tall ancient shadow opened his mouth too. Roar! An earth-shattering roar suddenly reverberated in the air. The furious roar brought about terrifying sound waves that shattered the surrounding void, while Jian Wushuang, who was around real god Xue Wu, had no choice but to block the impact of the sound waves by putting his hand before him. As for the 99 shadows, they vanished into thin air with the attack of the sound waves. Young man, I found your real body. Real god Xue Wu lifted the corner of his mouth and laughed malignantly. His cold gaze locked onto Jian Wushuang. The very next moment, he took a huge stride. In his 6 arms, the 6 hammers gave out billowing power. Just like a warrior descending. 18 heavenly fires. Under the drive of strong divine power by eternal real God, the 6 hammers were thrown out ferociously at the same time. A strike followed closely by another. In an instant, there was a total of 18 strikes. On average, every arm threw out 3 strikes. Every strike had the power to kill an ordinary void real god easily. They were 18 continuous strikes, but they struck at Jian Wushuang at almost the same time. It's 18 heavenly fires. It is Mr. Xue Wu's strongest unique skill. The few real gods from 4-symbol mansion looked shocked. On the other hand, Jian Wushuang concentrated and there was a boundless sword intention that soared up. It was as though it was going to tear heaven and earth apart. Then he wielded his long sword ferociously too. Bang, 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 bang. The tremendous noise reverberated in the universe. Every loud clash, every collision made the surrounding void real gods gulp. They knew clearly that if they were to encounter such collisions with their power, they would most likely not survive. Chapter 1583 Jian Wushuang's Strongest Ability. Chapter 1583, Jian Wushuang's Strongest Ability. Apart from gasping in surprise, the real gods were all curious. Would Jian Wushuang survive such a frightening attack? This is Lord Xue Wu's strongest attack, and even the top void real gods are unable to block it. No matter what, Jian Wushuang is still a universe god. Faced with such an attack, he will definitely not survive. That's right. He's dead. The few void real gods who had survived were talking to one another. It was obvious that they were very confident in real god Xue Wu's moves. However, at that very moment, roar! A furious howl shook their ears to the extent that they almost went deaf, and could be heard from the core of the battle as it reverberated across the horizon. This furious howl drowned all the voices on the battlefield, and it caused the people observing the battle to become quiet. Right after that, the audience saw that at the core of the battlefield, a lofty golden divine ape had emerged abruptly. The golden divine ape was extremely huge. Moreover, its aura was so strong that it caused everyone to suffocate. Furthermore, its body was covered by a layer of golden armor, its head wore a golden helmet, and it also had a commanding presence. At the moment it rose up, the void around the area burst open. As for the strongest attack that real god Xue Wu had used, the 18 hammers disintegrated before they could unleash their full power completely. Moreover, the energy wave from the divine ape gave off such an impact that real god Xue Wu had no choice but to retreat a few steps. How can this be? Real god Xue Wu revealed an astonished expression as he looked at everything that was happening in front of him. In front of him, Jian Wushuang was holding his sword in one hand and standing in the void. Moreover, the golden divine ape, which was emitting a shocking aura, shrouded his body. The strongest move of the 5-beast soul manipulation knack, divine ape. What was different from the past was that when Jian Wushuang unleashed this move with his full power at that moment, there was an additional golden armor and helmet on the golden divine ape. This was the form that the golden divine ape took after Jian Wushuang had completely mastered the 5-beast soul manipulation knack, and it was at its strongest. Combined with Jian Wushuang's soul power, which had achieved the highest level of a void real god, its power was something that even an eternal real god could not underestimate. Real god Xue Wu. Jian Wushuang's hair was blown back and he stared at real God Shui Wu with burning eyes. Since I made a breakthrough, you are the first one to force me to unleash my full power. Today, let us have a good fight. Jian Wushuang's voice was filled with unlimited excitement. While he was speaking, a big crimson sea of fire flowed from his body. The crimson sea of fire covered 10,000 miles in an instant and transformed it into a sea of fire. Within the sea of fire, apart from real gods who were able to stand, all the vegetation had been burnt into ashes. As for Jian Wushuang, he was standing in the middle of the sea of fire as its emperor. The 5B soul manipulation knack had achieved perfection, and with that, the divine ape, the strongest move, was unleashed. During this process, Jian Wushuang's soul power and divine power had combined wonderfully. In addition, there was also the secret skill Scarlet Kingdom, which had also achieved its peak. Since his secret skills had achieved their peaks, the power of these two secret skills would rise greatly as well. The Jian Wushuang of the very moment had finally used his full power. In the void, real God Shui Wu had an ugly expression. He could feel that Jian Wushuang, who was standing in front of him at that moment, was giving him a lot more pressure compared to before. As for the void real gods who were observing the battle, every one of them opened their eyes wide as they were surprised. It was only then that they understood that Jian Wushuang had been holding back previously. However, as of the very moment, Jian Wushuang had released his full power for real. Let's fight. Jian Wushuang gave a shout and his body stepped on the void fiercely. Bam, bam, bam. By further combining them with the Scarlet Kingdom, which was also at its highest level, Jian Wushuang's abilities rose again. Hence, at the aspect of power, Jian Wushuang was no longer weaker than an eternal real god like him. Jian Wushuang put all his tricks to play in collaboration with his secret skills, and he barely increased his power to the level of an ordinary eternal real god standard. One should know that the two eternal real gods also knew secret skills that increased their power. If they were to perform it, they would definitely be more powerful than Jian Wushuang. The reason why Jian Wushuang wasn't afraid of them and couldn't fight against them head-on was that Jian Wushuang's comprehension towards the power of Heaven Wei was too high. If I'm not mistaken, his comprehension towards reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine has already surpassed the second level in Doctrine Palace, and not even that far away from the third level. With such a comprehension level, one could be categorized as monstrous, even among void real gods, let alone the fact that he is only a universe god. Real God Chi Hua found it unbelievable. One must know that the comprehension of power of Heaven Wei would be more difficult at a later stage. An ordinary void real god would only need to possess comprehension towards the power of Heaven Wei that could pass the first level in Doctrine Palace, and he will be categorized as the peak among void real god. As for the second level in Doctrine Palace, it was the standard of an ordinary eternal real god. Many eternal real gods' comprehension of doctrines stopped at that level and most of the time were only limited to one single doctrine. How about Jian Wushuang? He comprehended two doctrines also and has already reached the standard of an eternal real god, or maybe even higher. Besides, the reincarnation doctrine and space-time doctrine that he comprehended were both supreme doctrines. Comprehension of supreme doctrines is much more difficult compared to a nine-heaven god doctrine. After a ferocious fight, although real God Chi Hua and real God Shui Wu gave full play to their power and put Jian Wushuang at a disadvantage, the situation was only confined to that. If they intended to cause severe damage to Jian Wushuang or to kill him, it was impossible. Just then, Vroom! The entire void suddenly quivered. At the back of the battlefield, at the volcano that everyone had forgotten about, the prohibition that covered the volcano suddenly collapsed. A large amount of power dispersed with the prohibition. As it dispersed, there was a faint blade light that rampaged. The sudden change of circumstances attracted everyone's attention. Even Jian Wushuang, real God Chi Hua, and real God Shui Wu, who were fighting, looked towards the source of the movement. Finally, Jian Wushuang looked delighted. Real God Chi Hua and real God Shui Wu creased their eyebrows. At the end of their sight, also the middle of the prohibition that was dispersing, there was a cold figure that was taking a stride forward slowly. He was in a white robe, carrying a saber on his back. His face was cold, yet extraordinarily handsome. Then, on the battlefield, everyone's attention was caught by the figure in a white robe that was taking a huge stride forward. That is Duan Lingfeng. Then, the experts at the scene recalled that the direct cause of the incident wasn't Jian Wushuang but Duan Lingfeng. But Jian Wushuang displayed a terrifying power, an insane massacre, and everyone's attention was caught. On the contrary, they were distracted from Duan Lingfeng. Until then, Duan Lingfeng only revealed himself before everyone. Then, the experts at the scene could faintly feel the aura that was given out by Duan Lingfeng's body. That's a real god? Suddenly, everyone was stunned. Under the fearful gaze of the two eternal real gods, real god Qihua and real god Xuewu, the saber shadow descended and its target was real god Qihua. Real god Qihua had already blown up his two dashing eyebrows and he had a grave expression. In addition, his eyes were glowing brilliantly. At that moment, a great amount of red flames rose from his body and his two palms went completely red. With a wave of his right hand, he moved the red flames around him and in the next moment, Emperor-level blood fire destruction. Boom boom. An extremely tall giant wave, composed of only red flames, appeared. The sea of fire was monstrous and it was burning everything in the universe crazily. Straight after that, the tall and enormous red fire wave clashed with the scarlet, dazzling crimson saber shadow head-on. As soon as they clashed, a great amount of saber shadow and red flames dissipated at once and spread through the surroundings madly. The void and ground around the area welcomed a storm that would bring about the end of the world. However, all of a sudden, at the core of the clash between the two attacks, another crack formed at the center of the tall and enormous red fire wave abruptly. At the start, the crack had been very small. However, it started to spread at an incredible speed. In a short amount of time, the tall, enormous red fire wave split into two. Within the crack, the crimson saber shadow that Duan Lingfeng had unleashed was still glowing brilliantly with a crimson light, and it headed straight for real god Qihua. Puff! Real god Qihua gave a groan and his expression turned pale at once. Moreover, some blood had flowed out from the corners of his mouth and his body retreated miserably. Duan Lingfeng raised his head, shot a glance at real god Qihua and swung his palm immediately. Darkness region. All of a sudden, unlimited darkness enshrouded the whole universe and Duan Lingfeng was like the emperor of the darkness. His eyes glowed with a shrill light and with a change of his body, he appeared in front of real god Qihua. Right after that, frightening murderous intent burst forth abruptly. A vast blood mist then changed into a sea of blood which covered him and real god Qihua completely in an instant. Jian Wushuang and many experts from the Four-Symbol Mansion were watching from the sidelines. However, at that moment, they could only see the sea of blood and hear crazy clashing sounds which came from the sea of blood continuously. However, they were unable to see what was happening within the sea of blood. There was an intense clash and insane sounds of thunder. In just an instant, which was even less than a breath's time, the sea of blood which had filled the sky dispersed. Duan Lingfeng and real god Qihua's bodies then appeared in front of everyone again. However, when the audience saw the conditions of the both of them at that moment, they were all surprised. At that moment, Duan Lingfeng was still in his white robe and he was extremely indifferent. Although he was in the sea of blood, his body did not have any bloodstains and his aura was extremely strong. As for real god Qihua, his hair was in a mess and his face was filled with blood. At the same time, one of his palms was cut off and he had lost his 5 fingers. Such a condition was really very tragic. Real god Qihua, an eternal god, was actually forced into this state in such a short amount of time. The people in the area who were observing the battle became stupefied. Even Jian Wushuang's eyes shrank. He had fought with real god Qihua moments ago and his abilities were indeed not too bad. At the very least, he was slightly stronger than real god Xuewu. In a one-to-one match, Jian Wushuang had confidence that he could suppress real god Qihua. However, if he wanted to force real god Qi Hua into such a tragic state and even cut off half of his palm in such a short period of time, he was sure that he could not do it. However, Duan Lingfeng had managed to do it. After making a breakthrough to a real god, Duan Lingfeng's abilities should be slightly stronger than mine, Jian Wushuang thought. Chapter 1586, Identity Exposed? Chapter 1586, Identity Exposed. Duan Lingfeng. Real god Qi Hua, who was cornered, had fire in his eyes as he stared at Duan Lingfeng and bellowed, "What happened today? We at Four Symbol Mansion definitely won't let it slip so easily. No matter where you go, we at Four Symbol Mansion will definitely hunt you down. And you, Jian Wushuang." Real god Qi Hua looked at Jian Wushuang and the hatred in his eyes grew stronger. "You killed 30 void real gods in Four Symbol Mansion. Even if you have lineage of star to back you up, don't think they can shield you. Humph. Let's go." Then, real god Qi Hua turned to leave immediately. Although the experts of Four Symbol Mansion refused to admit defeat, they had no alternative. They knew clearly that, with their current formation, it was impossible to keep Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng. On the contrary, they might be massacred instead. The other experts from Four Symbol Mansion would be rushing over, but it definitely required time. During that time, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng definitely would have left. Who would be silly enough to stay back at the same spot? As they couldn't kill the two of them, they, of course, could only leave. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng stood there coldly as they watched the experts of Four Symbol Mansion leave. What real god Qi Hua had said continued to reverberate in their ears, but they didn't worry. The two of them were top geniuses and they rose abruptly in adverse circumstances. They experienced countless challenges and failures. They naturally wouldn't be bothered by the threat that Four Symbol Mansion pulled. Jian Wushuang, thank you. Duan Lingfeng looked at Jian Wushuang. Between you and I, it's necessary, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly and said, let's make a move first. This is still within Four Symbol Land, in Four Symbol Mansion's territory after all. Although the experts of Four Symbol Mansion left, it is hard to say if they would charge against us again. By then, experts like Chaotic Real God might attend to us personally. Regardless of Jian Wushuang of Duan Lingfeng, they knew their limitations. They could only be evenly matched with an ordinary Eternal Real God at most. If they were to run into Eternal Real God who was slightly stronger or on the peak, they could only flee. If they were to run into Chaotic Real God, whichever Chaotic Real God they sent could easily kill the two of them. Let's go, Duan Lingfeng nodded. Very soon, the two of them left. The experts of Four Symbol Mansion, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng left one after another. The remaining were the experts who came because of the 10 billion Chaos Gem bounty. Then there was bedlam among the experts. They had witnessed a shocking battle with their own eyes. From their point of view, the battle was unbelievable. In the void, outside Four Symbol Land. Few were finally out. Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng let out a breath of relief. In no time, a figure appeared before Jian Wushuang. Mr. Lei Chao, Jian Wushuang smiled faintly at the person. Duan Lingfeng looked humble too. I originally thought I have to take action personally. But from what it seems, I belittled the two of you. Lei Chao looked at Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng and flashed a rare smile. Jian Wushuang laughed in silence. The message for Lei Chao to take action was a plan for the worst. It would definitely cause the relationship between Four Symbol Mansion and Lineage of Star to break entirely. However, although Jian Wushuang had killed many real gods of Four Symbol Mansion, it was considered Jian Wushuang's individual act. Four Symbol Mansion could at most reprimand Lineage of Star, but not to the point where they would instigate war against Lineage of Star. Let's go. Let's return first, Lei Chao said. Jian Wushuang nodded and he sent a message to Hall Master Yuan to inform him of the ins and outs of the story. As long as you leave alive. As for Four Symbol Mansion, don't worry so much. As long as you don't go into Four Symbol Land, they can't do anything to you, Hall Master Yuan chuckled. Oh yeah, Hall Master Yuan, I have to tell you something, Jian Wushuang's voice became solemn. What is it? Hall Master Yuan asked. In Burning Demon Region, I did not conceal my power and aura. Chapter 1587, Inverse Cultivator? Chapter 1587, Inverse Cultivator. Oh! Many experts within the big hall revealed a surprised expression, and one of them spoke straight away. Real God Qihua, Duan Lingfeng is definitely a genius. However, he has only just made a breakthrough to a real god. Hence, no matter how impressive he is, it's still not possible for him to be stronger than you, right? Ha! Many of you are clueless. Within the Burning Demon region back then, as soon as Duan Lingfeng made a breakthrough, he fought with me straight away. Moreover, it was a close-quarters battle and I did my best. In the end, in just a short amount of time, at best 2 or 3 breaths time, he forced me into a miserable state and even cut half my palm off. Real God Qihua said. That? The experts within the big hall had puzzled expressions. When I fought Duan Lingfeng, I could tell that he had a high comprehension of the Massacre Doctrine and Darkness Doctrine. If I'm not wrong, they have both reached the stage where they could clear the second level of the Doctrine Palace. Moreover, his saber skills are very shocking and his secret skills are extremely powerful. I am indeed not his opponent, Real God Qihua said. No one could help becoming silent. Real God Qihua was an eternal real god and he would definitely feel a bit arrogant. Thus, he would naturally not lie and acknowledge that he was inferior to someone who had just made a breakthrough to a real god. In actual fact, compared to Duan Lingfeng, that Jian Wushuang is more frightening. Real God Qihua said. The experts looked over immediately. Jian Wushuang is merely a universe god. However, his abilities are so strong that they have achieved the level of an eternal god as well. This is very impressive as he has completely exceeded the realm of a universe god. If my guess is not wrong, Jian Wushuang should be an inverse cultivator. Real God Qihua said earnestly. What? No one in the big hall could remain calm and a few people stood up directly. Even the intimidating purple-robed man, who was at the highest part of the big palace, looked at Real God Qihua immediately. Qihua, you said that Jian Wushuang is an inverse cultivator? On what basis? The intimidating man questioned. It's just my own prediction. I have a video of Jian Wushuang fighting in the Burning Demon region. All of you can take a look as well. Real God Qihua took out a token and with a thought, the video that the token recorded appeared at the center of the big hall immediately. The high-level experts of the 4-symbol mansion were also watching carefully. The first thing they saw was Jian Wushuang fighting with 4 peak void real gods. In the end, after facing each other twice, one of them was killed and 3 of them were forced to retreat. After that, many void real gods of the 4-symbol mansion besieged Jian Wushuang at the same time. However, they were massacred by Jian Wushuang mercilessly. Next, it was Jian Wushuang fighting with real god Xuewu and finally, with 1 against 2, he fought against both Real God Qihua and Real God Xuewu at the same time. After watching the video, the big hall became completely silent. It was deathly silent. Completely silent. The high-level experts of the 4-symbol mansion were completely stunned. It could not be helped. Even they were unable to believe what had happened in that video. A universe god had massacred a big group of void real gods easily and also pushed back an eternal real god. Finally, with 1 against 2, he had fought against 2 eternal real gods fiercely and was only at a disadvantaged position. Was that really a universe god? Looking purely at his abilities alone, Jian Wushuang has definitely exceeded the realm that it was thought he could achieve. Over the many years in the eternal chaotic world, apart from a few inverse cultivators, there has never been a universe god with abilities that have achieved such a level. However, from just this point alone, we still cannot say for sure that he is an inverse cultivator. There is also a possibility of him getting a very huge opportunity which will result in his abilities surpassing all the universe gods in history, the intimidating man said. From this point alone, we are indeed unable to confirm for sure. However, not to forget, not long ago, Jian Wushuang was reduced to a disabled person? Not long after going through the fight in Wu Bei's cave, news of him being poisoned by a potent poison and losing all his abilities was spread. This piece of news had been confirmed a long time ago. Moreover, there were even quite a number of people who had seen with their very eyes that Jian Wushuang was merely a white-haired old man and he did not have any divine power in his body at all. After that, there was a rumor that he went to a mystery land where ordinary people lived, and it seemed like he had planned to stay in that world forever. That was definitely his most miserable period of time, and he stayed in that state for more than 20,000 years. It is only in the present day that he reappeared in front of us. However, when he reappeared, not only did his abilities recover, his abilities also skyrocketed. What does this mean? Real God Chi Hua's eyes looked around at the surroundings. Inverse cultivation test. The intimidating purple-robed man, who was at the highest part of the big hall, squinted his eyes slightly. That's right. It's the inverse cultivation test. Real God Chi Hua laughed coldly. The lineage of Star said that some people had plotted against Jian Wushuang and caused him to be poisoned by a potent poison. However, who has heard of such a matter? It must have been made up by the lineage of Star themselves. Moreover, even if he were to be poisoned by a potent poison, why would he lose all his abilities and be reduced to a normal old man? I have never heard of such a poison before. Even if it does exist, it must be an extremely frightening and high-level poison in the eternal chaotic world that has disappeared a long time ago. However, if it's really that kind of poison, how did the lineage of Star cure it for him? Not to mention raise his abilities greatly as well. Hence, there is only one possibility that caused him to lose his abilities completely, and that is the inverse cultivation test. As for him recovering his abilities, that's because he cleared the inverse cultivation test and made a breakthrough. With that, his abilities would naturally skyrocket as well. In other words, back then when he had been roaming around in Wu Bei's cave, Jian Wushuang was only a universe god of the second heaven, and it was only until not long ago that he made a breakthrough to become a universe god of the third heaven. Everyone at the big palace looked at one another and nodded their heads. It was obvious that they agreed with real God Chi Hua's words. Only the inverse cultivation test could explain everything that had happened to Jian Wushuang. With this, it was enough to explain why a universe god like Jian Wushuang would possess such frightening abilities. It was because of the fact that he was an inverse cultivator, and it was not something that could be explained with normal understanding. The lineage of Star actually has a disciple who is an inverse cultivator. Moreover, he has already grown to such a level. They have really hidden him well. The intimidating purple-robed man spoke with a low voice. Umph. With a cold hum, the intimidating man stood up straight away and his eyes were extremely cold. Originally, the lineage of Star had no connection with us. However, this time round, their disciple has killed more than 30 of our real gods. Therefore, we cannot let this matter pass just like this. Isn't Jian Wushuang an inverse cultivator? With just that point alone, there should be many people in the eternal chaotic world who want to kill him, especially those who see the lineage of Star as their enemy. After all, everyone knows how much potential an inverse cultivator has. As such, we shall let all these people take care of Jian Wushuang. Make the news of Jian Wushuang being an inverse cultivator public immediately. Chapter 1588, All Parties Shocked. Chapter 1588, All Parties Shocked. There were many solo experts where the battle in Burning Demon region took place. Hence, the news about the battle couldn't be contained even if they wanted it to be. After the battle ended, it immediately spread at a terrifying speed, like wildfire. Especially the mirror image of the battle. The mirror image recorded clearly that Jian Wushuang had massacred many real gods of Four-Symbol Mansion with his power of universe god. There was even a scene where he had suppressed an eternal real god. As the image spread, whichever experts saw the images were astonished. There were almost 40 void real gods that hemmed in a universe god at the same time, but they were massacred instead. How could it be? Is he really just a universe god? In the history of eternal chaotic world, was there any universe god this scary? Everyone found it unbelievable. Vientiane Tower even amended and announced the latest universe god ranking list at the first instant. As Jian Wushuang had lost all his power previously, his name was removed from the universe god ranking list long ago. But then, when the new universe god ranking list was announced, he was listed in the first place directly. There was no doubt about the ranking. Everyone found it right and reasonable. Even though he had never fought against God-destroying King, who was in the first place, from the terrifying power and the result that he displayed in the battle at Burning Demon Region, he was far beyond God-destroying King. After all, although God-destroying King was a top genius, he couldn't fight against an eternal real god head-on, let alone corner him. Monster. Monstrosity. In the history of the entire eternal chaotic world, he is a superb monster that is hard to come by. All kinds of names were given to Jian Wushuang, and Jian Wushuang became a synonym for monster. However, for Symbol Mansion also spread other news. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator. The news was simple, but it was like a stone that created thousands of ripples. The higher-ups and experts in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, even a number of almighties, were startled by the news. The higher-ups and experts were all knowledgeable, and they quickly determined that the news was a fact. They could tell from the power that Jian Wushuang displayed and also from the incident where he lost all his power temporarily. Jian Wushuang was no doubt a true inverse cultivator. Only the legendary inverse cultivator could possess such unbelievable power at the stage of universe god. Inverse cultivator. The eternal chaotic world was the scariest and most unique existence. They were born to go against the world, they were born to be different. The potential of an inverse cultivator was far beyond an ordinary cultivator. If it was an inverse cultivator who had yet to pass through inverse cultivation tests, they might not need to be worried. After all, inverse cultivation tests were the biggest threshold as an inverse cultivator. Among 10 inverse cultivators, there might not even be one who could pass through. But once he passed through 3 inverse cultivation tests, his potential would be unboundedly great. Sky Sword Mountain, under the 9 lofty sword mountains, in the secretive cave dwelling. Jian Wushuang is an inverse cultivator. The owner of Sky Sword Mountain, who carried 3 swords on his back, looked just like an enduring, fierce sword. He received the news and let out a hearty laugh. An inverse cultivator, and one who already passed all inverse cultivation tests. Such potential, another Wu Bei. Back when Wu Bei rose up at an unbelievably fast speed, he shocked all almighties in eternal chaotic world. It is a pity that there was an unexpected incident that led him to his deathbed. In a crimson territory, there was an overlord. He was Huoyu. Not only was Huoyu an almighty, but he was also considered one who was extremely strong among the almighties. He could be on an equal footing as the founder of lineage of Star Palace Master. Star Palace old man, I followed our agreement and never exposed the young man's identity. In the end, he was the one who exposed himself. I can't be blamed. In the lofty Crimson Hall, Huoyu, who had a unicorn on his forehead, laughed wantonly. TSK Diska. An inverse cultivator, and he passed through all inverse cultivation tests. Lineage of Star has obtained an impressive little guy. It was a dark, starry night. There was a piece of dark land floating in the starry night. In the dark land, there were lofty mountains, and all the mountains were hundreds of thousands of zhang high. Even the smaller ones were more than 10,000 zhang high. Right in the middle of the countless mountains, there was a dark palace in the air. In the spacious hall, a figure in a black robe suddenly appeared in the hall. He shouted anxiously, "There's an important report." On both sides of the hall, guards who were engulfed in the dim light immediately looked at the figure in black robe. There were some who glanced with a furious gaze. "What report makes you so anxious?" A low yet hoarse voice reverberated in the hall. The voice was coming from all directions, but no one knew where the person who was speaking was. The figure in a black robe had already knelt down and looked politely at the empty throne right in front of the hall. "Master, I have received the news that the genius Jian Wushuang, who was removed from the must-kill name list in our tribe previously, his power has recovered. Not only did he recover his power, but he has also become even stronger than before. With his power as a universe god, he suppressed an eternal real god. Vientiane Tower in 10 cultivation sanctuaries listed him on the first place on universe god ranking list. On top of that, I receive a piece of credible news that Jian Wushuang is an inverse cultivator. The reason he lost all his power entirely was that he was in the progress of passing through his third inverse cultivation power. Now, he has already passed through it. Inverse cultivator? The hoarse voice spoke again. An inverse cultivator who has already passed inverse cultivation tests and suppressed an eternal real god with his power as universe god. Isn't this Jian Wushuang more monstrous than real god Wu Bei back then? Yes. The figure in a black robe nodded continuously. Many experts in 10 cultivation sanctuaries, including the Almighties, said that Jian Wushuang could totally be compared favorably with real god Wu Bei, or even surpass real god Wu Bei and be compared favorably with the few higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. No way! A low bellow suddenly burst through the dark hall. Real god Wu Bei is within the range that our tribe can accept, but the few higher-ups in Sanctuary Alliance. Such experts, any extra headcount can increase Sanctuary Alliance's power tremendously. We definitely can't let Jian Wushuang have a chance to reach that level. Send down my command. Immediately list Jian Wushuang in the top must-kill name list. Chapter 1589, New Deacon. Chapter 1589, New Deacon. Level 1, the black-robed man could not help but be stunned. In the 10 cultivation sanctuaries, many top geniuses and experts were on their list of must-kills. Moreover, the list of must-kills was split according to different levels. In particular, the highest level was level 1, and this class of people was made up of people who they wished to kill the most. Before this, there were only 3 people on level 1 of the list of must-kills. However, at that very moment, another person was added to the list. At the same time as the experts of the whole eternal chaotic world were shocked by the abilities that Jian Wushuang displayed and his identity as an inverse cultivator, Jian Wushuang and Duan Lingfeng had already left the colored glaze sanctuary. Jian Wushuang, let's part here, Duan Lingfeng said. Alright. In any case, there is still the transmission token. If you come across any trouble in the future, you can just send a message to me, Jian Wushuang said. Yes, Duan Lingfeng nodded his head slightly. After that he left alone. As for Lei Chao, who was by the side, he was looking on quietly. It was only after Duan Lingfeng left that he murmured, "This Duan Lingfeng is indeed a very outstanding genius. However, it's a pity that he dislikes being bound to a sect." During the period of time where they were traveling, Lei Chao had tried to invite Duan Lingfeng to join the lineage of Star. However, he was rejected by Duan Lingfeng. There are pros and cons of joining a sect. However, Duan Lingfeng is quite unsociable and he does not want to join a sect. That is pretty normal as well, Jian Wushuang said. From knowing Duan Lingfeng and interacting with him, Jian Wushuang knew what kind of person Duan Lingfeng was. Let's return to the lineage of Star. I have not gone back for a very long time, Jian Wushuang laughed. Yes, Lei Chao nodded his head. The two of them headed toward the lineage of Star at once. At the lineage of Star, inside the cave that was created by special gems, Hall Master Yuan and more than 10 deacons of the lineage of Star had gathered together and they were staring at the video in front of them in detail. The video was currently playing the scene where Jian Wushuang unleashed his killing spree in all directions of the Burning Demon region. This martial art motion is amazing. A total of close to 100 shadows. Gosh. Look, the real gods of the four-symbol mansion have become stupefied one by one. They have all been surprised by the abilities that Jian Wushuang displayed. The deacons were talking and all their eyes were glowing brilliantly. It was only after a long time that they finished watching the video. What followed after that was a sigh. Previously, we still felt that it was such a pity that Jian Wushuang had lost all his abilities and was reduced to a disabled person. However, who could have thought that Jian Wushuang was actually an inverse cultivator and he was undergoing the inverse cultivation test previously? I did not expect the lineage of Star to actually have an inverse cultivator as its disciple. Moreover, this inverse cultivator has also cleared all the inverse cultivation tests. It must be our luck. Perhaps many big powerhouses in the 10 cultivation sanctuaries will all be envious of us now. All of the deacons had excited expressions. When Jian Wushuang lost all his abilities back then, all of your attitudes were not like this. Hall Master Yuan's dissatisfied voice could be heard, and this caused the deacons present to become embarrassed at once. Human beings were all pragmatic. In the past, when Jian Wushuang had lost all his abilities, the deacons no longer had a good opinion of Jian Wushuang, and they had even tried to get Hall Master Yuan to give up on Jian Wushuang by not giving him many resources. However, at that moment, after knowing the full details of the matter, the deacons naturally felt a bit diffident. Hall Master Yuan, if my guess is not wrong, you have known Jian Wushuang's real identity since a long time ago, right? A red-clothed woman asked. Yes, I know, Hall Master Yuan nodded his head. That explains it, the deacons understood immediately. It was no wonder that Hall Master Yuan had always treated Jian Wushuang well. For example, even though Jian Wushuang had lost all his abilities for such a long period of time, he still withstood the pressure for Jian Wushuang forcefully. It was actually due to the fact that he knew Jian Wushuang was undergoing the inverse cultivation test a long time ago. Hall Master Yuan's expression changed abruptly, and he looked around the surroundings straight away. Jian Wushuang and Lei Chao have returned. Everyone, do you want to follow me to welcome the both of them back? All the deacons looked at one another and nodded their heads immediately. With Hall Master Yuan at the front, tens of deacons headed to the entrance of the endless Milky Way at once. This also attracted the attention of many Star Palace disciples right away. What's going on? By the looks of it, Hall Master Yuan and the deacons are planning to go to the entrance of the endless Milky Way. Why are they going there? Let's go and take a look as well. A number of disciples of the lineage of Star followed at once. It was only when everyone reached the entrance of the endless Milky Way that they stopped moving. In no time, two shadows appeared in the lines of vision of everyone. Be it the deacons or the disciples, all of them knew the two of them. It's Lord Lei Chao, and the other person is Jian Wushuang. It's senior brother Wushuang. From the looks of it, he has recovered from his poison. Indeed, he has recovered. I can feel the divine power from his body. The exceptional genius from the past has returned. The disciples of the lineage of Star caused a commotion straight away. From Jian Wushuang's battle in the burning demon region to that moment, only tens of days had passed. Although the news of that battle had already spread, most of the normal Star Palace disciples did not know about it. As such, they were naturally surprised when they saw Jian Wushuang at that moment. Swoosh! Hall Master Yuan and his group of people welcomed Jian Wushuang and Lei Chao back at once. Jian Wushuang, welcome back. Hall Master Yuan wore a smile on his face. Hall Master Yuan. Deacons, Jian Wushuang spoke modestly. No need to stand on ceremony. Hall Master Yuan waved his hands and said, Today, the deacons and I have come here together so that we can welcome you back. Secondly, we have come to announce something. Oh! Jian Wushuang's expression changed. The deacons around the area, as well as the disciples who were observing from a distance away, all revealed a puzzled expression. From today onwards, the lineage of Star will have another deacon, and he is Jian Wushuang. Hall Master Yuan's voice was extensive. By spreading it with divine power intentionally, his voice spread to each and every corner of the lineage of Star. With that, almost every disciple of the lineage of Star heard the announcement. Atop the Milky Way, the deacons behind Hall Master Yuan looked at one another and nodded their heads. As for Jian Wushuang, he had a confused expression. Let's go. We shall continue this inside the cave. Hall Master Yuan laughed. Jian Wushuang nodded his head, and the group of them headed to the cave that Hall Master Yuan had mentioned immediately. However, at that moment, the big lineage of Star was in a complete uproar. Many disciples were totally dumbfounded. What's going on? Why did Jian Wushuang become a new deacon out of nowhere? Isn't he still in the Qing Tian mystery land and living the life of a normal person? Moreover, there were rumors a long time ago saying that there's no chance of him ever making a comeback. However now, could it be that his abilities have recovered? Even if his abilities have recovered, that doesn't mean that he can become a deacon directly, right? They usually don't take action, but when they do, even Lineage of Star will find it difficult to protect you, Hall Master Yuan said. There's such forces out there? Jian Wushuang's face changed. A force that had specialized in assassinating geniuses and experts in 10 cultivation sanctuaries. Theoretically, such hidden forces should be a public enemy of 10 cultivation sanctuaries since long ago. But they had yet to be exterminated. The factor alone showed the hidden forces weren't ordinary. As he clenched both his fists with strength, an explosive power burst forth and caused space to become distorted straight away. As expected, since I have cultivated the second volume of Xianmie Golden Body successfully, my body has achieved the level of an eternal real god. Jian Wushuang was delighted and excited. Previously, his body was only at the level of a real god. At that very moment, it had achieved the level of an eternal real god. Visit on our novel full. The great improvement of the body meant that Jian Wushuang's defense would be stronger and his ability to keep himself alive would be greater. For secret skills, I have already honed the secret skills that I have learnt to the highest level that they can achieve at my current stage. Next, the things that I can still improve are my unique skills and comprehension of the Heaven Way. Jian Wushuang's eyes glowed brilliantly. After that, he closed his eyes and started his comprehension with great concentration. Jian Wushuang's understanding toward sword principles was so high that it was shocking. However, he was restricted by his realm previously. At that very moment, his realm had made a breakthrough and he could display all his understanding of the sword principles. In the Burning Demon region, he had merely comprehended peacefully for 15 years and managed to create a primary stage 2 real god unique skill. However, Jian Wushuang knew that the primary stage 2 real god unique skill was not his best. His sword principles were still in the eruption stage, and it was the same for his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine and spacetime doctrine. At that very moment, he had completely emptied his mind and immersed himself into his training. He was very certain that currently, the most important thing was to train. At the very least, he had to train until the eruption stage came to an end. Once the eruption stage was over, the growth of his abilities would slow down. At that time, learning things through experience and looking for opportunities would be the most suitable way for him to continue improving himself. With training, Jian Wushuang's sword principles, as well as his comprehension of the reincarnation doctrine and spacetime doctrine, improved continuously. In the blink of an eye, another 300 years had passed. Jian Wushuang. A message was sent and Jian Wushuang, who was in the midst of his training, woke up with a start. Hall Master Yuan, what's wrong? Jian Wushuang questioned. Today, there will be a banquet at my place and the deacons of the lineage of stars staying at the Milky Way will have to attend it. You should come as well, Hall Master Yuan said. A banquet? For what purpose are we holding the banquet such that even all the deacons have to attend? Although Jian Wushuang had doubts, he still moved his body straight away. In no time, Jian Wushuang arrived at the location of the banquet. It was a very large-scale banquet. Within the lineage of Star, there were currently more than 40 deacons staying at the endless Milky Way and all of them were present for the banquet. Jian Wushuang was also with them. After arriving at the banquet, Jian Wushuang could tell immediately that the star of the banquet was Lei Chao. Among the real gods of the lineage of Star, Lei Chao was the only one who made it into the real god ranking list. Hence, he could be said to be the number one of the real gods within the lineage of Star. Also, before Jian Wushuang had come to the lineage of Star, Lei Chao had been traveling in an extremely special place that was filled with danger. For the past few years, Lei Chao had returned to the lineage of Star to take a rest for a period of time. However, at that very moment he was about to leave again. Thus, the banquet was held intentionally to send Lei Chao off. Lei Chao is an expert of the real God ranking list, and his abilities are extremely close to those of an almighty. However, he still needs to travel with caution in that place. Moreover, it is also said that he might lose his life at any moment. If I'm not wrong, he should be traveling to one of the 8 lairs. The king of venomous worms' voice echoed in Jian Wushuang's head. The 8 lairs? Jian Wushuang's expression changed. That is one of the most dangerous places of the eternal chaotic world. In addition, there are also many things over there. However, your abilities now are still very weak and you do not have the qualifications to go there, the king of venomous worms said. Jian Wushuang nodded his head. Although he possessed the fighting capabilities of an eternal real god at that very moment, he was still not at the top of the eternal chaotic world. Therefore, he did not know and was also not qualified to know any of the secrets of the eternal chaotic world. The banquet was unusually lively. Chapter 1592, Helpless. Chapter 1592, Helpless. 6th lair? King of venomous worms was shocked too. The 8 lairs, the stronger they are the more dangerous it is. Many strong chaotic real god only dared to venture into 8 lair. As for the 6th lair, it is dangerous even for experts on real god ranking list. Lei Chao has guts. Jian Wushuang squinted his eyes. He could tell that Lei Chao's trip was very dangerous. Many higher-ups on Lineage of Star definitely knew. Hence the banquet to send him off. Come on everyone. Let's toast to Lei Chao. Hall Master Yuan raised his glass as his voice traveled across the hall. The higher-ups of Lineage of Star at the banquet naturally raised their glasses and Jian Wushuang did the same. Lei Chao departed right after the banquet. Lineage of Star resumed its tranquility again while Jian Wushuang returned to his secret room to continue his cultivation. In the blink of an eye, another 200 years passed. In the secret room, Jian Wushuang slowly opened his eyes. Regardless of if it was enhancement of sword principle or speed of comprehension towards Heaven Way, it obviously slowed down significantly. It seems that the eruption period after I break through and become universe god in the 3rd heaven has passed, Jian Wushuang muttered to himself, but there was a smile on his face. An ordinary cultivator would be welcomed with a short eruption period after they broke through and entered another realm. Jian Wushuang was an inverse cultivator, so he was trapped in the realm of universe god in the 2nd heaven for a long time. Then, as he broke through, the eruption period was naturally much longer. It lasted for a total of 500 years. In the 500 years, Jian Wushuang didn't spend his time in vain. After painstaking cultivation, regardless of sword unique kill or comprehension towards Heaven Way, there was a major improvement. His power was naturally much stronger than when he was in Burning Demon region. Once the eruption period is over, it will be useless to continue to cultivate in seclusion. Jian Wushuang immediately left the secret room. In Sword Star, under a big tree, Jian Wushuang, Ling Feibai, Long Ya and Xian Yi sat together. Xian Yi, congratulations for breaking through and becoming a real god. Among the 4 of us, you're the first who broke through and became a real god, Jian Wushuang said to Xian Yi. Ling Feibai and Long Ya by his side looked envious too, especially Long Ya. He stopped at the realm of universe god much longer than Xian Yi. But then Xian Yi had already broken through and he had yet to break through. Xian Yi looked at Jian Wushuang with a weird look and said, although I broke through and became a real god, in terms of power, I am far behind a peak void real god. I can't compare to you and Duan Lingfeng at all. You want to compare with the 2 monsters? Ling Feibai rolled his eyes at Xian. Regardless of if it was Jian Wushuang or Duan Lingfeng, they were both widely recognized as monstrous monsters that were hard to come by in eternal chaotic world. Like Jian Wushuang, he was only a universe god but his fighting power could be evenly matched with an eternal real god. When Duan Lingfeng broke through and became real god, he could defeat an eternal chaotic real god head-on too. As for Xian Yi, although he was also a top genius, he was far behind if he were to compare to the 2 of them. Visit on our novel full. Jian Wushuang heard Xian Yi's complaints and laughed them off. Although he was a deacon elderly then, he didn't act haughtily. He was willing to chat casually with his few peers. Just then, swoosh, swoosh. There were two figures that suddenly plunged in from the Milky Way and landed on Sword Star. The four of them under the tree looked. When they saw the incomers, Ling Feibai, Long Ya and Xian Yi got up simultaneously. Jian Wushuang, we shall make a move as you have things to deal with, Ling Feibai said. Jian Wushuang nodded. After Ling Feibai and the other two left, Jian Wushuang got up too and looked at the man and woman before him. Elder Wu Liang, Elder Fei Yan, why are both of you so free to visit me today? Jian Wushuang smiled faintly. He waved and there were fresh wine and delicacies on the stone table again. Come and have a drink together. Drink is not necessary. We came today to ask for a favor. Elder Wu Liang smiled faintly and he sounded quite gentle. Oh. Jian Wushuang looked at the two of them in shock. From what he knew, the two elders before him should be considered as extremely strong among all deacon elderlies in lineage of star. For instance, Elder Wu Liang was a peak eternal real god. As for Elder Fei Yan, although she was weaker, she was extremely close to a peak eternal real god standard. He wasn't a match for either of them. With such power, they still needed help from him. Please do tell me what's going on, Jian Wushuang said. I'll be frank, Real God Wu Liang said. Actually, it is a task that Hall Master Yuan has delegated to me. He wants me to kill a real god. The real god's name is Real God Shiju. Real God Shiju shared a great resentment with lineage of Star. Many years ago, there were two disciples of Star Palace from lineage of Star who came across him were killed when they were wandering outside. What? Jian Wushuang was shocked. The disciples of Star Palace were the most outstanding ones in lineage of Star. Every one of them was truly a top genius. For instance, there were many higher-ups in lineage of Star derived from disciples of Star Palace. Lineage of Star attached great importance to the disciples of Star Palace too. However, Real God Shiju killed had two disciples of Star Palace. No wonder lineage of Star would want to kill him. Real God Shiju is very cunning. He knew that he didn't have a place in 10 cultivation sanctuaries after the incident was exposed. Hence, he ran out of 10 cultivation sanctuaries long ago and went to some holy kingdoms far away. Over hundreds of thousands of years, we of lineage of Star couldn't find him. But not too long ago, we lineage of Star received a piece of credible news that Real God Shiju returned to 10 cultivation sanctuaries and he is hiding in Colored Glaze Sanctuary. Hall Master Yuan assigned me to kill him at Colored Glaze Sanctuary. However, Real God Shiju is a strong eternal real god after all. Plus, his defensive power is extremely strong. Most importantly, his speed is extremely fast and his martial art motion is impressive too. With me alone, it is almost impossible to kill him. So, I found you and Elder Fei Yan. Elder Fei Yan was good at entangling and trapped his opponent while you, Jian Wushuang, have a terrifying martial art motion. You might be even faster by a slight bit than Real God Shijia. Only collaboration with the two of you will give me the confidence to kill Real God Shiju. Of course, the reward for the task is bountiful. By then we can split evenly, Elder Wu Liang said. Jian Wushuang, what do you think? Elder Fei Yan looked at him too. Real God Shiju is on which land in Colored Glaze Sanctuary? It shouldn't be in Four Symbol Land, right? Jian Wushuang asked. Don't worry. It's not in Four Symbol Land. If it was on Four Symbol Land, I wouldn't come to look for you, Elder Wu Liang laughed. He knew the resentment between Jian Wushuang and the overlord of Four Symbol Land, Four Symbol Mansion. If Jian Wushuang were to head to Four Symbol Land, he would be courting death himself. If so, all right then, Jian Wushuang agreed straight away.